Before we dive into the episodes, some background information is in order. This series takes place in the 23rd century. Humans have by now colonized the solar system, which has resulted in the division of three factions. Earth, which is controlled by the UN, Mars, an independent military power, and the Belters, who live and work in the asteroid belt and are fighting for equality via the OPA, an armed militant group. Now that that's out of the way, let's continue with the first episode. Episode 1, Dulcinea. This first scene starts with a yet unnamed woman alone aboard a ship named the Scopuli. She walks into the reactor room and witnesses how a blue substance consumes one of the crew. On the space station Ceres, we see that a detective named Miller is being assigned to find a missing girl, Julie Mao, the girl on the Scopuli. We are then taken to Earth, where we meet Christian Avasarala from the UN, who is questioning a member of the OPA for information about stealth technology. In space, the ice hauler ship Canterbury receives a distress signal from the Scopuli. Once they reach the Scopuli, they only find a planted distress beacon. However, they are out of time when a Martian ship with stealth capabilities shows up. They hurry into the shuttle and are fired upon, but the torpedoes pass right by them and destroy the Canterbury instead. Episode 2, The Big Empty. Due to the impacts from the Canterbury's debris, the survivors on the night find out that the communication devices are fried and they're unable to send out a message. Back on Earth, the OPA agent refuses to share any information with Avasarala, which worries her. Outside the night, Holden and Amos build a makeshift antenna to send out a distress signal. Once inside, Nagara informs the crew that the distress beacon they found on the Scopuli is Martian. On Ceres, Miller finds a clue regarding Julie and goes to see the Dogmaster, who informs him that he remembers Julie boarding the Scopuli. In the belt, the night's distress signal is picked up by the Martian flagship, the Donager. However, before the shuttle is boarded, Holden sends out another distress signal, as insurance. Episode 3, Remember the Cant. The survivors of the Canterbury are interrogated about Nagara's affiliation with the OPA. Yao, the ship's captain, thinks the OPA is to blame for the Cant's destruction and shows Holden that they are being followed by a bogey. On Earth, Avasarala leaks information to Franklin de Graaf to find out if Mars was behind the attack on the Cant. She finds out that Mars wasn't. Concurrently, Miller meets a member of the OPA, Anderson Dawes, regarding Julie, but their conversation yields no result. On Ceres, we see that Holden's last distress signal made it to the rest of the system and is sparking unrest among the Belters, who are blaming Mars for the destruction of the Cant. Riots ensue and one of Julie's contacts is killed and found by Miller. After the riots, Miller's partner Havelock is cornered and stabbed in the chest. Episode 4, CQB. The Donager is still being pursued and has been locked into a CQB, a close quarter battle. Holden recognizes the type of ship engaging them as the same type that destroyed the Cant. Meanwhile, in a holding room, Shed Garvey is beheaded by a piece of debris. Seeing the battle is lost, Captain Yao orders Lieutenant Lopez to get Holden off the ship and to Martian command. On Ceres, Miller finds out that the dead man he thought to be BZ Bedico was actually a data broker. On Tycho Space Station, the Nauvoo, a new type of ship, is being built under the supervision of Fred Johnson. Aboard the Donager, Lopez and Holden save Nagara, Amos and Kamal. While they make for the escape shuttle, Lopez is shot. Kamal then pilots away the shuttle from the Donager, after which Captain Yao initiates the self-destruct. Episode 5, Back to the Butcher. On the Donager's escape shuttle, the crew finds that Lopez has succumbed to his wounds. Moments later, they receive a message from Fred Johnson, who offers them help. The crew accepts his offer and on their way to Tycho Station, change the ship's name into Rocinante, while finding out that Holden has become the face of protest on Ceres. In the belt, Miller visits a recovering Havelock and finds out that the Scopuli was sent to intercept a ship called Anubis, which he believes was carrying important cargo. In the past, on Anderson Station, a group of civilians is protesting against the UN. After some attacks to their outer hull, they decide to surrender. However, despite this, they are killed on orders of Colonel Fred Johnson of the UN Marines. Following his latest lead, Miller uncovers a data cube in Julie's mechanical hamster. While leaving her apartment, he is kidnapped. Episode 6, Rock Bottom. On Earth, Avasarala uses her political power to obtain a spy on Tycho Station. The Rocinante crew arrives on Tycho Station and meets Fred Johnson. He wants to use them for recognition of the OPA by the UN. He also reveals that he sent the Scopuli on a recon mission, and now wants Holden to retrieve the sole survivor, Julie Mao. It turns out that Dawes was responsible for kidnapping Miller and wants any information he has on Julie Mao. Back on the Rocinante, the crew and Johnson's people modify the ship's signature to look like a gas hauler and depart for Arrows. When the interrogation doesn't yield the result Dawes had wanted, he orders Miller to be killed. However, Detective Moss saves him. He then finds out that a discovery was made on Phoebe's station, but when he tells all of this to his superior, she takes the cube and fires him. Episode 7, Windmills. On the Rocinante, the crew discovers that the ship is emitting a radio transmission. When they check out the compartment where the signal's coming from, they discover Kenzo, the spy from Tycho Station who's been broadcasting the signal. To gain insight into Holden's past, Avasarala visits his mother in Montana and concludes that he has a tendency for rebellion against authority, but isn't a terrorist mastermind. Due to the radio transmission, the Rocinante is flagged for inspection by the Martian Navy. However, they plan to pretend to be running a Martian Black Op. To pull this off, they have to uncover the secret code words. They successfully break the code's locker and relay the words to the Martians, who recognize the code and let the Rocinante leave without being boarded. On Ceres, Miller liquidates his assets and leaves for Arrows, taking Julie's necklace with him. Episode 8, Salvage. The crew of the Rocinante arrive at the coordinates given to them by Johnson. Here they find the Anubis, the ship that had attacked the Scopuli and destroyed the Canterbury. After boarding the ship, they make for the reactor room, where they see the reactor covered in an organic substance. When the substance begins to absorb power from the reactor and expands, the crew hurries off the ship and destroys it. On Earth, Aaron Wright decides that Holden must be killed and sends a team to ambush him on Arrows. Miller arrives on Arrows and soon afterwards, Holden's crew arrives on Arrows as well. They are on their way to Julie's last known location, but are ambushed by Kenzo and Aaron Wright's Black Ops team. During the firefight, Miller joins in and aids Holden and his team. Together they go to Julie's apartment, only to find her consumed by the organic substance on the Anubis. Episode 9, Critical Mass. In a flashback on the Scopuli, Julie reveals that the organic substance on the Anubis in fact is a weapon made by her father. The Scopuli is then boarded by her father's men and her crew killed, except for Julie. However, the blue substance kills her captors and she manages to escape, but not before being infected. On Arrows, a scientist named Dresden shows up and takes her blood, which is now heavily mixed with the proto-molecule. He then informs Julie's father, Jules Pierre Mao, for whom he's working, of the situation. Dresden and his men then lock the residents on Arrows up in shelters. While trying to find out what is happening, Miller and Holden receive a deadly dose of radiation. On Tycho Station, Johnson publishes the data about the stealth fighters he found on Low Pass and states that the OPA couldn't build such ships, and that they are in fact built on Earth. Episode 10, Leviathan Wakes. On Arrows, Nagara, Amos, Kamal and Semi use the shafts to reach the Rocinante, while somewhere else on Arrows, Miller and Holden are trying to find their own way to get to the docks. In the process, they find out that the citizens deliberately have been infected with Julie's blood. On Earth, Avasarala is introduced to Jules Mao by Aaron Wright. Later that night, she tells her husband that Aaron Wright had Frank de Graaf killed, since he had the information on the stealth ships that were being built on Earth. After having reached the Rocinante, Amos kills Semi for wanting to leave without Holden. Eventually, Holden and Miller also reach the ship and are treated for their radiation sickness. With the crew back together, the Rocinante departs Arrow Station, where Kenzo is consumed by the growing proto-molecule.